Hello, and welcome to my presentation on working with students affected by fetal alcohol spectrum disorder. This presentation is intended to provide viewers with some basic information about fetal alcohol spectrum disorder, also known as FASD, and some tips to keep in mind when working with students affected by FASD. To go along with this presentation, there is a handout which covers some basic strategies to use when working with students affected by FASD in the classroom, as well as a list of recommended resources to check out for further information. Before we begin, I have two disclaimers. The first one is that there are no pictures in this Prezi. I know it is a bit misleading with the picture frame background. However, I do have a reason for this choice, and that is that historically pictures have been used in literature and media to indicate that there are higher rates of fetal alcohol spectrum disorder within certain cultures, ethnicities, and socio-demographic groups. I wanted to avoid perpetuating these stereotypes, so I have chosen not to use pictures, as well as I really wanted to emphasize that FASD is an invisible disability and that you cannot look at somebody and immediately identify them as having or being affected by FASD. My second disclaimer is something that you might have already picked up on, and that is that I will use the phrase affected by FASD quite a bit throughout this presentation. The reason for that is that I want to make a distinction between the student and the disability. So I'll be using phrases like affected by FASD, impacted by FASD, or living with FASD, and I'll try to avoid using the phrase student with FASD because it puts the disability at the forefront. So let's begin. The first questions that we're going to ask ourselves is, what is FASD, and why is it important for teachers to have a working knowledge of FASD? Fetal alcohol spectrum disorder is an umbrella term referring to a range of possible effects caused by prenatal exposure to alcohol. FASD itself is not a diagnostic term, but an educational term. We will go over the different diagnoses in the acronym section. It is important to know what FASD is and how to work with students affected by FASD because it is an incredibly common disability and one that you will encounter throughout your career, if not in your practicum. According to Health Canada, FASD affects 1 in every 100 births and is the leading cause of developmental delay in North America. This statistic is actually quite conservative if you consider that FASD is underdiagnosed in the population. There are higher rates of FASD in communities with higher alcohol consumption, so depending on where your practicum placement is, an understanding of FASD is going to be incredibly helpful, and it's also going to increase your hireability if you go to apply in that area later. Something to be cognizant of when working with students affected by FASD is that there are lots of moral judgments that are made that get in the way of service provision. To avoid making judgments about alcohol consumption during pregnancy, try to keep in mind that alcohol is a legally and socially acceptable drug in our society. Another thing to keep in mind is that women rarely drink alone. Men are usually there when women are drinking, and they can even be pressuring their partners to drink. So it is an issue that involves both men and women. Another thing to keep in mind is that there's often 3 or 4 weeks before a woman even knows she's pregnant. She could have, unknowingly damaged her fetus before she even realized she was pregnant. So you do not have to be an alcoholic to have a child affected by FASD. Another thing to remember is that FASD has only been recognized since 1973, and there's still lots of conflicting messages about whether or not it's safe to drink during pregnancy and how much it is safe to drink. So the best thing to keep in mind is that there is no safe time or safe amount to drink during pregnancy.